Happy Tuesday. Thank you so much for joining us. Around 44 million families live in rental homes, making up over 1/3 of the American population. Indoor air pollution is 2 to 5 times worse than outdoor air pollution. When you own a home, you may have more control over the indoor air quality. However, those who rent homes may feel like they have less control over their living space. That's why we're so glad to be joined today by Amanda Klecker, the Healthy House of the Block. Amanda is a certified home inspector and building biologist who is passionate about helping homeowners create their own healthy living environment. So during this live, we're going to discuss what to look for when during low-tox rental searching, things you can do to control toxic chemicals inside your home, how to have conversations with your landlord about environmental toxicant, and much more. So I saw. Oh, here you are. And
Hello. Hi, how are you?
good. How are you? Thank you so much for joining
Oh
us.
my gosh, I'm so excited. This is gonna be so fun. Hold on, I'm just gonna adjust a little bit. There we go.
Yeah, we actually recently being asked by many people about, actual home living environment. So the timing is like perfect. And also, the holidays coming, a lot of people are thinking about making purchases, whether it's appliance or bigger ticket items. So the timing is just cannot be more perfect.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your background and how you became a certified home inspector.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like I'll give you like the condensed version because it's like round and round. It was never anything that I thought I wanted to do. But I've always loved homes. I've always loved the idea of more like holistic health. That's kind of I grew up with like a mix of, a little bit of holistic. And so everything was kind of like, well, if we can do it naturally, let's do it naturally, or let's,
Absolutely.
try to be as healthy as possible in a preventative way instead of dealing with all of these issues later. And so taking those two things and then also my love for like just learning new things and meld it all together. And that's kind of where this came out of. I grew up with a family who had a plumbing and heating business. And so I was very familiar with being inside of homes and learning about water quality, and kind of spurred me on to learn about other areas of a healthy home because you know how it is once you start looking at one area, you realize there are so many other areas, but they're all tied together and they're all the space that we're living. And so I decided to do home inspections, but also offer more of like a healthy home side of my business because I felt like there was a need for it that wasn't being met. It's not something that a lot of people do. And as more and more of us become aware of the toxins in our space, we need help understanding what to do next. And so then I also decided to um, take classes and certifications from the International Institute of Building Biology. And I learned a lot from them and just how the health of our home really impacts the health of our body.
I love it. Okay, let's break it down. What does
Yeah.
a certified home inspector do?
Yes. So if you think about when you go to buy a house, you meet me when you go to hire someone to do a home inspection. So we really go through the entire home and check to make sure that it's healthy and safe for you to live in. Sometimes there are issues with homes that you just can't see, and you need a professional to come in and really investigate different issues and test different areas of the home for different things regarding safety or integrity of like the structure of the building, depending on how old the building is that you are buying. So a certified home inspector is someone who really just goes through and helps you when you're going to buy a house. Some people have inspectors come out when maybe they're going to sell just to make sure that their home is ready for the next people. But most of the time, it's when you're buying a home when your realtor says, okay, they accepted our offer, now it's time to get an inspection, that's what I do.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think many more people are familiar with a home inspector, but then a building biologist, because you're also a building biologist. What is that?
Yeah. So that is taking our space of our home and understanding it on a more holistic level. How does the environment, the space and how it works, there's so many things that go into it. It can be your indoor air quality. It can also be what direction your home faces and how we can make it as energy efficient as possible without compromising the indoor air quality, because a lot of times to many of us that means just sealing our house up really, really good. We actually want to create like a breathable space in a sense. And so building biology takes the climate, the environment, all of it, kind of puts it together in like a system almost. And how do we create a home that is really positive in all of these areas? So it's something that has the right levels of humidity. It doesn't have, a lot of EMFs, especially where we're sleeping. It doesn't have a lot of added toxins from outdoor materials and outdoor things that we bring in our house. And it kind of just, it works to create a space that allows our body to restore, because when we're out in the world, we come in contact with all these things, and we're trying to create almost like a safe haven for our body to heal every day at the end of the day, or when we're at home, because hopefully that's where we're spending probably most of our time. And then we can go out and do it again because our body naturally detoxes. And so creating a space that is healthy allows us that space to do that.
I love it. You had a great post about low tox considerations when looking for like a home to rent. And I'd like to ask some follow-up
Yeah.
questions. Like, what are the things that we should be aware of when we are looking at like older buildings?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because I do realize, especially I do a lot of work in like Minneapolis, and we have a lot of older buildings, and there are a lot that get rented out. And so really when we're looking at old buildings, I think the important things to ask the landlord about before you like move in is number one, mold.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
that's a huge it's a huge concern, especially in older buildings where maybe they've had past water damage.
Mhm.
Because what we know about water damage is if it doesn't get
Yep.
dried out completely within 48 hours, we have huge issues. Yeah. And sometimes maybe the tenants before you didn't realize there was moisture coming in or didn't notify the landlord. And so that is something that we see a lot in rental homes and rental buildings, because sometimes there's just a lack of communication between the two parties, or it just waits too long, and it is really a time sensitive issue. Older homes also generally have older foundations, and they have older siding. Even if it looks like they have new siding, sometimes it's just wrapped around older siding, and all of that can hold on to moisture. So we could have a potentially very humid environment inside, which then just encourages mold to grow. So I think mold is the biggest thing, especially because it can be very problematic to certain individuals. I mean, most of us would be able to, like, we wouldn't feel great, but some people are very sensitive.
Yeah.
And it is one of, a lot of times, I don't know that this is everywhere, but in Minnesota, it is one way that you can get out of a lease is if you find mold or if there's a mold issue. So I think that's the biggest thing. And then after that, it's kind of looking at the things that we know are in older houses, asbestos, lead piping. So those are things, like you probably aren't going to hire an inspector to walk through your rental that you're potentially looking at. You're probably just going to ask the landlord, and
Okay.
they should be able to tell you if it's ever been tested for these things. I mean, asbestos is one of those things. A lot of times we can just visually see the components. It could be, wrapped piping for boilers. It could be flooring. It could be tiles. It could be ceiling tiles. It could be in the attic. And so a lot of times if it's left undisturbed, it's not as big of a concern, but it's just a great question to ask, especially when we're looking at an older home.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned a mold, right? Like, so where we should be like looking for if you're doing like a walkthrough of the potential rental property?
Oh, that's a great question. So, depending on what you have access to and what you'll be renting, if there is a basement space, that's usually where we see mold. I will warn you that sometimes people get this grand idea to just like spray paint on all of, the like walls in a basement so it looks super new and shiny, and sometimes they're covering things up. So it is, it is something to be like, yes, sometimes it looks really, really nice, but it's always something that gives me a little red flag when I'm doing an inspection because I kind of want to know what was under it. Um, so I would say lower levels, and then even open up cabinets. And look, under kitchen sinks is a big one. Not, I don't see as much under bathroom sinks, and I think in kitchens it's generally because a lot of people keep their garbage under their kitchen sink, and it can just cause a lot of like high levels of humidity. And so you can have mold under there. But I think those are the two big areas in bathrooms. Just do like a visual look around the ceiling fans that are like bringing all the air outside. And then around even like toilets, kind of like behind and like next to the tub where water kind of spills out. Those are spots to just kind of be really aware of when you're walking through, and don't be afraid to open up cabinets and look inside. I think a lot of us probably get a little bit like, well, I don't want to invade anybody's, like space. And so I'm just going to like do a quick look. But no, if you're going to live there, like open it up and look around. And another spot sometimes we see mold is in window tracks. So definitely look inside window tracks or on windows, especially if they're wood and they're older. That condensation that sits on them can cause mold to grow in the window itself.
Yeah, it's a lot better to deal with it before you move in.
Yeah.
After you move in, you actually have some like health impact on you, then that's bad.
Yeah, and you also have some leverage. Like if you're already in and you're already paying, it can be really hard to get somebody back out depending on your landlord and who's renting to you. But yes, we don't want to move into an environment like that and then try to heal our body. We want to like heal the environment and then put our bodies in it.
Absolutely. Why do you suggest to avoid rentals with carpets
Yeah.
if possible?
Yes. Okay, so rentals and any home with carpet, if you can avoid it. Now, I will say, I have carpet in my house. I live in Minnesota. People do not want cold floors all the time. So sometimes we have carpet in our homes. But carpet holds on to so many things: moisture, dust, dirt, dander. A lot of carpet actually has a plethora of toxins in it. So if you think about carpets, they are sold to us with this idea that they repel stains, they repel moisture. Like if you ever like brand new carpet, if you like drop water on it by accident, it will bead up on top of it, and it's amazing. It doesn't absorb, but that means that there's toxins on the carpet, like stopping it from absorbing any water. And the backing of carpet has a lot of toxic adhesives. The pad underneath is toxic. And so when we have this in our space, it's two things. The carpet itself is off-gassing. It might off-gas less after 2 years. However, it still will off-gas. And yeah. And the fibers from the carpet, if you think about like, dust is ever, it's a lot of textile fibers, especially from carpets because we're walking on it and causing those fibers to kind of kick up all the time. And so that in itself is toxic, but then also it holds on to toxins around your house. So if someone wore their shoes in, all of those toxins that come in on your shoes, bacteria, pesticides, toxins from like roads and things like that, they all get kind of embedded into the carpet. And unless you're doing a really deep carpet cleaning all the time, you're not getting them out. Another thing to think about is if you have any sort of allergies to pets, and like, this rental allows pets, that is definitely
Gets all trapped.
stuck. Yeah, it's going to be stuck in the carpet. And then two, a lot of times landlords will go in and they'll have like someone clean the carpets. Now, cleaning carpets is fine. However, they have to be dried out like immediately as quickly as possible. And it's very difficult to do. So they hold on to moisture, and then we can have issues with mold underneath in the pads. So it's something, if you could find a rental that doesn't have carpet, it definitely will be a healthier space for you to live in.
Absolutely. What should you look for in terms of windows and ventilation?
Yeah. So if you're looking in maybe like a condo type building or an apartment building, sometimes I have noticed windows do not open at all because it can be a safety hazard, especially if they're very high up. Sometimes you can find windows that will at least open a few inches. That's best. You know that you want to have some airflow. You don't want to have an apartment or a rental space that is completely closed off and you cannot get fresh air in. So that's something to double check, because I know, again, when you're doing a walkthrough, you might not think to open windows, but definitely try and make sure that they do actually open in. And two, in like we were talking about older rentals, sometimes those windows are really old and they're stuck, or they're painted shut, because someone came in and just did a touch up. And so you want to address that and make sure that you can at least open up the windows when you're in there. Um, if you can find a rental that has vented fans. So vented fans are very important to pull out moisture, but they also help with our indoor air quality because they're pulling our air out, which means more air has to come in to replace that. And so bathrooms are a big space where we want to see vented fans out, not just like a recirculating fan. If you are lucky enough to have a laundry area in your rental, if you have a vented fan in there, it's all the better because it will prevent your space from becoming very humid, and it will also help with indoor air quality. And then the kitchen. And this can be something that's a little hit or miss with rentals. Sometimes it's just a recirculating fan. It's better than nothing. And sometimes you'll have an actual vent that goes out depending on if it's, an apartment building or just a house or something like that. But these are great things to look for when you are going to move into a new rental.
Makes so much sense. While you might not have control over, the type of carpeting or like large appliance in your rental, there are like but things that you can actually take control of to reduce your toxic burden,
Yeah.
which you have a ton of great information. So why should we think about things like our pillows? Like
Yeah.
what should we look for when like shopping for pillows?
Yeah. I mean, so it's so true what you said. We don't have control over everything in our house, even homes that you own. I mean, you have control, but really, do you? Are you really going to be like ripping out your drywall? And these are all things that cost a lot of money. So sometimes we just start with the most impactful things. And to be honest, I think the biggest thing you can do in your rental is get rid of dirt and dust, and open up windows. That is like, it's all free. It doesn't cost you anything. These are great things to do. But then when you start looking at materials to bring into your house, be very aware of what you're purchasing and buy with intention. Maybe even do some research beforehand. Or
Mhm.
what I like to do is almost keep like a running list, because I don't know about you, but I'm always like, oh, I should get that. Oh, I got to replace this soon. And so I have like a Google Keep, and I keep in there what is going to be purchased in the future. And then I write down what I'm going to be purchasing so that I know I'm going to make a healthy choice. So when you're looking at things like pillows, we want to find something, if you can, that is third party certified by, like, the Global Organic Textile Standard is a great one, GOTS. You can find organic cotton pillows. You can find K-pop pillows. You could find like a natural latex pillow that would be certified by the Global Organic Latex Standard, so GOLS. And just kind of do your research ahead of time instead of just running to Target and picking up any old pillow, because sometimes that'll have flame retardants in it. It will have other toxins, and you're keeping it right next to your face. And it's something that we really want to be aware of, because if you think about it, you're spending 8-ish, maybe hours on this pillow every night. You're breathing next to it, and it's touching your skin. And so we could make a huge impact in a really healthy way by finding at least a lower toxin pillow, if not a completely toxin-free pillow. I actually just did a series on this in my feed where you can get all kinds of information on what to look for and what you should avoid.
That's amazing. Yeah, that makes so much sense because you'll be sleeping like, 8 to 10 hours, depending on if you nap or not. But
10
so
hours would be
yeah,
amazing.
that is a lot of time
Yeah,
spending on that.
especially yeah, and especially for kids too. I think kids probably spend even more time in their beds than we do as an adult, especially like as your kids get older. I mean, my kids go read in bed or they like draw in their bed. And so they're there more than just like sleeping times. And so it can be just a place where we can really create a low toxin environment to just give their bodies a break.
Mhm. So while like large appliances may up to the landlord, we have control over our small
Yep.
appliances. So what are some good ideas for like small
Yeah.
appliance shopping?
Yeah, this this is like a really good question. I had not thought about this because, a lot of times we think, oh, we have control over it. But yes, in a rental, this is an area that we don't always have control over. And so I think some of the things that you could do are help your landlord out. Like they don't want to go and do all the research. So know what it is that you are looking for in turn and like specifics. So do your research. I have a few posts that I've done on appliances because it's a tricky area. A lot of them have toxins. Some of them have toxins, but the toxins are encapsulated and so they really are not a concern. Some of them have different it's almost like you kind of have to choose which toxin in the appliance is going to be less harmful to me. So do your research beforehand and know what it is that you are interested in purchasing, whether it be a brand or a specific model, and see what they say. For all you know, then I'd be like, okay, great, thanks, that's perfect, we'll put it in. If they didn't, I think you could even could you offer things like, well, could I pay just the difference in, what you were going to get and what I would like? And I think if you've been there for a while and you're a long-term tenant, that definitely would be maybe an easier ask as opposed to like if you just moved in and you've signed a 6-month lease or something like that. So I think there are ways, and letting your landlord know why it's important to you. Maybe it's important because someone in your home has some sensitivities and it really impacts their day-to-day wellness and things like that. I think being very open and telling them why it's important definitely can get you a lot farther instead of just kind of saying things like, well, I just want a low toxin appliance. Let them know like we're you're a person, you have needs and it's important to your day-to-day life to have your space as toxin free as possible.
Mhm.
I think those are a couple options that you could kind of see where they go when you're looking for appliances and seeing what your landlord is willing to do.
Yeah. What advice would you give it to a person, who actually need to replace some large appliances and they wanted to ask their landlord for to look for low tox options?
Yeah, I don't know that I would ask my landlord to look for low toxin options unless
Same.
they're unless they're very aware of this space. Some people probably are, but I think landlords a lot of times they're busy, they probably manage multiple
Mhm.
properties. They don't necessarily have the time to do that research. So I think doing the research for them and saying, "What do you think about this option?" Um, could be a better route because you're taking some of that off their plate. And then, like I said, if it's a cost thing, you could see if they'd be willing, like how much they would have paid for a really cheap appliance versus what the cost of this one is, and see if you can meet in the middle or something like that.
Mhm. Any other like quick tips for reducing toxic exposures in our rentals?
Well, I think the big one is taking care of the inside as far as, house dust goes, because we do know that house dust is a very toxic thing that we keep in our homes because we just don't clean it enough. So I think getting some really good ventilation going and making sure that we have fresh air coming in and that we're able to get toxic air out. Those are some really good ones. Keeping your indoor space at like the ideal humidity level will also help. And that would be somewhere between 30 and 40%. You can get like a little hygrometer to kind of keep track of what it is in certain areas. If you have the opportunity, to remove any carpet, I think that's another good one that we could add to our list, because I think carpet is something that you want to avoid. And then really you have control over the things you're bringing in, so avoiding plastic in the kitchen if possible. Don't bring in any synthetic fragrance. Try to avoid that at all costs if you can, because it's in so many products and you have control over that, so you can choose wisely. Another thing that I think people forget about in rentals is you can filter your own water. And I think that's a great thing to really have control over, because often we forget about this when we're talking about homes, because we're so hyper focused on the things that we're bringing into our home. We forget that water is part of our healthy home, because we're drinking out of the pipes and, maybe out of the fridge. So make sure you have a filter. A countertop filter or a pitcher is better than nothing.
Yeah.
And so that's actually a great option for filtering water. And then anything that you bring inside, from your textiles to decor to furniture, try to make it a healthier choice. Really purchase with intention after you've done maybe just even a teensy bit of research, even just to know like what materials you want to bring in or avoid. I think that's another really good way to make sure you're not bringing in toxins.
I think another good way is also for people to check out your toxin-free home workbook. So tell us about that.
Yes, it's a great place to start. Or like if you kind of lost momentum, you're like, I don't know what to do next. It's a great like tool to use to kind of like get going again. And so yes, I have a free ebook that walks you through 7 different like big steps that you can do in your house to reduce toxins. A lot of them, I will tell you, are things you could do like today, this week. You don't have to like plan ahead for these. I do have other things that you can like work towards as far as information, because I think that's a big part of our homes. We can do things immediately, but then we also do have to plan. And so it's really like bringing those two things together to create a healthy house. And so the workbook will help you do things like right now, and reduce toxins as much as you can in the next, like, say, few weeks. And I have a link for that in my profile, like link. If you go down, there's one that says ebook. You can download it for free, and that is a great place to start.
And you also have a green products shopping guide.
Yes.
Tell us, how do you choose the product for that guide?
Yeah. I have, yes, there's a process in vetting some of these and making sure that they really are safe and healthy. One thing that I look at is brand integrity. For a lot of these, I really, I put a lot of weight on that, and whether a company is willing to disclose ingredients, disclose materials. Third-party certifications are also a huge factor that comes into play. And so I look at each individual one. I will tell you, I get requests from a lot of companies that I can't, I can't get behind, unfortunately. And I wish I could, because I'm sure they're, great companies, but the actual products that they have are not healthy enough for me to put out. And so, yes, each one is looked at very closely before I put it on my website.
Love it. Love it. I know people can get really overwhelmed when they start this process. So how can someone work with you?
Yeah. So there's a couple different ways. I do healthy home consultations. It's something where we get to work one-on-one, whether it's, you're just trying to get a handle on your house, or you're doing a remodel project, or you're just doing some small home projects that you just want to make the right choices for, like building materials that you're bringing into your space, or even like a new build where you have a builder, but you really want to make sure that you have someone in your corner helping you create a home that is as low toxin as possible. So we could work one-on-one. That's a great option. But I also have an online course that you can go through at your own pace, and it's called the Healthy Home Blueprint, and it helps you plan ahead and create a healthy home over time, because we talk about a lot of these bigger areas. And then there's also some things you can kind of do along the way to make it healthier before you're ready to make a huge change. So maybe you're not ready to get new cabinets in your kitchen. That's okay. There's things we can do to make your kitchen a healthier space, or even reduce toxins with those current cabinets. And so it's really kind of like a step-by-step process. It is like a blueprint essentially to creating a healthier home. And you can really customize it to your own specific home. So that's a great option too.
Wow, I love it. You're like a wealth of information. We're gonna have to invite you back to talk since we get it like people asking all the time, we mainly focusing on everyday life behavior around yourself, but not so much of if I need to remodel my house, what do I do? And then we get asked, okay, what floor do we choose? What kind of paint do we choose? Stuff
Right.
like that. So we're gonna have to invite you back to give people some tips.
I would love that. That would be so fun. It is. I mean, and it's often one of those things we feel very overwhelmed with, because there's just so many options when you start looking at a home project. So it's a great opportunity to really reduce toxins and bring in low toxin materials.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, this was so fun. Thank you so much for inviting me. I loved it.
See you soon.
Okay, sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.